the supernatural as something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky Southcoast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Good evening. Welcome to Spooky Southcoast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz, broadcasting live on WBSM and also on Spooky TV at SpookySouthcoast.com. And great to be back on the air after the Red Sox kicked us off last week. We had a great show planned with Jeff Belanger, and the Red Sox went to 11 innings. Lost anyway, so it was a giant waste of our time sitting around here. But we will reschedule Jeff for some time in the future. As my friend Jane would say, that's just pants.
Yes.
That's just pants. So, but tonight we have a great show planned, and I'm excited for this one. We've been talking about this for the last few weeks. We are going to talk with Christopher Quaratino, formerly known as Christopher Lutz, and we're going to be talking about his experiences living in the Amityville Horror House. He was one of the Lutz family that spent 28 days there, and we will speak with him about everything that went on, and including some of his upcoming projects, which, you know, we talk on this show all the time about the Amityville case. We've had Ryan Katzenbach on, Jackie Barrett. We've talked about the DeFeo side of things. We've never talked about the Lutzes, what they went through, both in that house and in the years that happened afterwards. And to me, the important part of the story isn't just what happened in those 28 days, but what they've had to endure. And I'm not talking about just paranormal phenomena. I'm talking about having to deal with the stigma of being that family and how that affects their lives and how it still does even to this day. So we're going to talk about all that and more with Chris. And as always, the phone lines will be open for you at 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. You can also email us spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. You can jump in the chat room on Spooky TV at spookysouthcoast.com. Say hi to everybody in the chat room tonight. And you can also text us your questions at 508-444-2661. So plenty of ways to get a hold of us during the course of the discussion, but I'm telling you, lock the doors, pull down the shades, as we say on the bumpers, because it's going to be a creepy night for you for sure. So let's bring our guest right on. Christopher Quaratino, formerly known as Christopher Lutz. If you know anything about the Amityville horror case, you know at least part of the story of what Chris and his family had to endure. But now he's here to share with us the entire story. Good evening, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Oh, we're glad to have you. I mean, you actually contacted me when we had Ryan Katzenbach on. I think it was almost a year ago. And you were telling me that, you know, there's so much more to the story than what we're being told. And I'm glad that you could join us to share that with us. I just want to ask you this right off the bat. I mean, what annoys you the most about the way that your family and what you've endured has been portrayed over these last 30 plus years?
Well, you know, for me, I was just a kid at the time, so I had no say in how any of this story got told.
Mm-hmm.
Had no part in writing the book, or what got added, or what got left out, or that it should even come out in the first place. Back in those days, it was taboo to talk about such a thing. You know, you may have been having something going on in your house, but you didn't dare tell anyone. And so for that story to go out the way that it did, it captured people's attention. That was just, it just became something that people all over grabbed to, because so many people were having their own problems in their own homes.
But
and finally, somebody said something about it. And then when it did get said, it didn't get said correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody that's looking at this as these things happen, but then when they started to hear some of the claims, and the claims got blown out of proportion, and you know, there was a statement that I once by a presidential candidate. It was Ross Perot. I thought he was a smart man. He didn't make it for president. But this was something that he had said. You could spend your entire lifetime building your reputation, and lose it in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that were added to that story, didn't matter how credible you are, you add. I'm looking for a radio-friendly word.
Oh, we don't shy away. Actually, it's usually when we talk about Amityville that the bad words come out. Just ask Jackie Barrett. But when you're dealing with,
You know, when there's stuff that's added to a story that gets peppered and spiced with all this other buffet of bullshit,
mm-hmm.
you know, the thing loses its entire credibility. That there was even this of something that could have happened there. Now, if we think about this, you guys been looking at paranormal for how long?
Long time. Matt Moniz has been checking it out probably since you were living in that house.
I've been doing it about 25 years.
Okay. Now, is there any reason that a house that just was the site of a mass murder would not be haunted?
Would not be haunted?
Yeah. Is there any reason that a house where a murder of 6 people had taken place in the manner that, you know, whether you buy that they were shot and nobody heard the shots, or whether you buy whether he a demon on him like he said before, and now he said he didn't, and now he says he does. You know, is there any reason that major, massive massacre that took place in there, where those 4 children were brutally murdered at close range with a rifle that is designed to take down elk? Is there any reason that there wouldn't be anything that would happen as a result of that murder?
For them not to be there would be that they would had crossed over, as some people would put it.
Okay.
But the negative psychological imprint would be there no matter what.
I would think that the house would still retain the memory of it. You know, there would be, you know, if you subscribe to the stone tape theory, that, you know, that energy that was imparted there emotionally and as well as physically is retained by the materials in the house and the surrounding structure. So yeah, something should still be left there. And in my personal opinion, I can't say scientifically that it's there, but in my personal opinion, there's definitely something there. I mean, I get it at Lizzie Borden's house all the time. Another place where plenty of murders have happened, and stuff happens in there like crazy.
And Chris, I would say, coming from a kind of a different perspective, is the idea that everybody that goes into that house from that day forward is going to know about those murders and is going to have that in the back of their minds. So they're actually going to help keeping
Agreed.
that perpetuated. So
yes, because what your imagination will do to you is almost as bad as what the paranormal can.
Mm-hmm. So now, when you were looking at the house with your family, I don't know how much you'll remember from that, you know, being 7 years old at the time, but when you go there and you look at the house with the real estate agent, I can't imagine that at that point you didn't realize what had gone on in the house. Maybe you weren't aware, but I can assume that George and Kathy were.
When my parents first went to go look at that house, none of us kids were with us, I don't believe. And I don't think that I had made it into that house until it was time for closing. And I believe we were down in the basement, and I recall saying to my mom, George, and the real estate lady, "Is this where they hid the bodies?" Now that's what I remember as a 7-year-old in relation to that's my first recollection of me, you know, that I can recall back to that. Okay, right here, I definitely knew about murder, or about the murders in the house. And did I even understand at 7 years old what it meant to be murdered or just die? Mm-hmm. When I'm told that, I don't recall the conversation where we were told. But according to my stepdad, and there's plenty that I disagree with him on, but according to him, we as a family were told, and I guess our decision made it matter to them to buy it, as a 7-year-old would know what it meant to ask him, "Is it okay?" Anyway, so yeah, I did know as we moved in But at that point in life, what do you really know? I mean, uh, I back then was a different time, and the way that children learned was much different than what we have today. Um, as kids back in the early 70s, you weren't exposed to the level of murder and death that you are as a young kid in today's society,
Oh,
where
sure, yeah.
every channel that you flip, there's a portrayal of something like that immediately in front of your eyes, from channel to channel. Back then, we were watching Happy Days, Lassie, Scooby Doo in the morning, and on Sunday mornings, for me, it was Abbott and Costello, meet Frankenstein, meet you know, and then you got Godzilla and King Kong.
Mhm.
That's what you know as a 7-year-old. So moving into that house, I did not really understand, real haunting or what any of that is. So, I don't know that I walked in, I didn't walk in there knowing what was going to happen or what could happen or anything to that effect. I was moving in, a new stepdad, and that's how it started for me.
Well, it's interesting too that you mentioned a new stepdad, because I think a lot of people don't realize that George and Kathy hadn't been married very long when you moved into that house, right?
Yeah, correct. My 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 natural father and my mom had been doing that. Would have been like around when I was 5. Mom was single mom, taking care of 3 kids to support herself and the house that she had. She worked nights in an all-night diner, graveyard shift. She worked the counter, and whatever tables came in. And George would come in frequently and sit at the counter and tell her jokes. And Mom was a good-looking lady, and she wasn't ready to get involved in another relationship, I don't think, at the time. And maybe she was wanting somebody in her life. That's a tough position for any single mom out there. Um, and one night, Mom's car wouldn't start as she needed to get home, and George wound up chasing her down on his. Mom started walking home. George chased her down on his Harley trike and gave her a ride home. That did turn into a love that developed into marriage on July 4th, 1975. Mom sold her house, and then us 3 kids moved with Mom into George's house. And George's house was too small, and they began looking for a house for all of us. I don't know how many houses they looked at first, but they were in the market to buy a house that was going to be big enough for all of us. And the DeFeo property, that what used to be 112 Ocean Avenue, now called 108 Avenue, Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, is a beautiful property. The house is on the water with a boathouse on the back. You could jump in your boat while it's still in the water, covered in basically a garage in the water, and back your boat out, drive it down the creek, through the Long Island Sound, out into the Atlantic Ocean, and anywhere else on the eastern seaboard that you wish to go. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
All right. Now, it was 3 stories above ground with a full basement, and it had a swimming pool for $80,000. A 3,000 square foot home on the.
And I know
Would you
that's
be interested in a property like that if I showed it to you?
absolutely. And I would tend to look at the history of the house and say, that's a shame that happened, but we can't pass up on this deal. Let's have it now. And then 30, 40 years from now, when we're ready to sell and get a smaller house, when the kids are all grown up, we're going to make so much money back on our investment. So it just made sense from start to finish. If you're comfortable with what went on, then it's a no-brainer.
George had his business that was second generation, actually third. His grandfather had started it. It was a local land surveying business, and there was no reason he couldn't move his operation into the garage, into the basement of that house,
Mm-hmm.
and save himself on the fees associated with the real estate to rent or own the property that business is run out of.
And he already owned a boat
and then
too,
he
right?
already had 2 boats
Yeah.
that he owned, not just one, 2 boats that he was paying docking fees on. And now those costs were going to be gone. He was going to have the business rental costs gone because that was going to be in the basement. Mom had money from the sale of her house, so all this talk I've heard of through the years, and people trying to dispute it, saying, "Oh, the Lutzes just wanted to get out of the mortgage that they couldn't afford." Well, with the substantial savings that they were saving on all the other things that they didn't have to pay, and with the substantial down payment they bought the house with Mom's money from her last house, plus they sold the house that George was in. So, it's not as though they were, desperate and needed to come up with a good ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as though they weren't looking for a house before they bought this one, that they just bought it because, oh, I can do something. It was a time and a place and an opportunity for a house that was, hey, anybody out there that wouldn't be interested in a house on the water on Long Island, New York, if you like that part of the country, at that kind of price, you're kind of, so I don't, they fell in love with the house before they knew what the history was.
Well,
so,
one thing that I'll ask you, and I think only you can really answer this, or someone from your family can answer this, and we know about the dysfunctionality of the DeFeo family. We've heard through so many reports over the years that things just weren't well with them at home. But what was it like for your family when you guys moved in? I mean, were you still adjusting to life with George? Was he still trying to learn how to be your dad, and you were still trying to learn to call him dad? I mean, or was by this point was the house a unifying factor, bringing everybody together?
Well, I need to straighten something out because there was something false that was in the 2005 movie that may even throw people off right here. George, my natural father was not dead, like they say within the first 5 minutes of that 2005 movie. Mom was not a widow. My natural father was still alive, and we saw him regularly for visitations on Sundays. So my real dad was still in my life, so I wasn't ready to call George dad.
Mm-hmm.
George showed up in my mom's life, and so this is all new to me that Mom was somebody other than my dad. I didn't know how to handle that. But George showed up. Back then I'm still riding my big wheel. And George shows up on a Harley trike and says, "Oh yeah, can your big wheel do this?" as he turns and wheelies down the road. Well, how do you think that would play off for a 7-year-old?
I think it'd be pretty cool.
Wow!
So it's obviously
so George had this impression on us kids that was just, what do you do? This guy's an ex-Marine. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's getting us involved in karate and in jiu-jitsu lessons. Me and my brother are learning how to fight. Now we're fighting each other at a skill level like we've never had before. And but George was you didn't know how to deal with him. Most of the time he'll laugh, but piss him off, and he would change completely different person. And so, he was a former Marine. He had his ways, and I wasn't ready, to call him dad, and I didn't know what was going on. But for the most part, by that point, my mom and George were getting along great. It was like a big honeymoon. Now, not only are we married, but now we bought this big house, and we're moving in, and we can get Christmas and set up and have a great Christmas. We were there for Christmas and New Year's. By mid-January, we were out of there.
Mm.
So yeah, it was. Man, I went a whole bunch of different ways on that question.
Well, that's insight that I've never heard before, and that's something that, knowing what we know about hauntings and about, especially if it's beyond just a simple, spirit of a dead person type phenomena, that it would prey on certain family situations. But it sounds like, things weren't, they were still working things out, but it sounds like things were relatively happy for you, and it sounds like, there shouldn't have been any reason for this to prey upon you. But one question I will ask, and this is something that I've never heard addressed either. I've heard the stories through Jay Anson's book and through interviews with your parents on TV that the first sign of phenomena in the house was your mom being touched on the hand. I was wondering, was there any history of paranormal activity in your family before that you've ever heard about?
You know what? That's a really good question, and it is relevant. I'm leaving that off the table for now.
Okay. But I mean, but it's something that would have been upsetting either way. I mean, it's not like it was a common occurrence, for anybody in your family to suddenly feel like they were touched.
How can I do this without? I don't want to say no because, as an adult looking back, there's things going on that I did not recognize as being anything, that I understood. So, but now as an adult, to look back on some of the traumatic things that you remember, I don't think Amityville was the start for me.
Okay,
And
well,
it wasn't the end.
we can leave it at that if that's what you choose, because I do know that you are coming forward with the whole story down the line when you decide how to present that best. So we'll respect we'll respect your wishes in that regard. And again, if I ask any questions that you don't, that you want to say, let's hold off and wait to talk about that. That's fine. Just go right ahead and say it. I don't want to overstep my bounds.
No,
Here.
that's cool. I look forward to just getting this whole thing off my chest, and I don't want your listeners to feel that I'm just being evasive. So I kind of want to explain to your listeners what's going on in my life right now, and why I'm coming out in the first place. I mean, 35 years is a long time to be quiet and then suddenly say something. This has been something that's bothered me bad enough. Like Tim mentioned, you know me as Christopher Lutz, but nobody knew Christopher Quaratino, and I was hoping to be Christopher Quaratino again, no longer associated to this story, by changing my name so people didn't know it was me anymore. I've done my best to try to leave this behind me through life. It's not something I like to talk about. They are traumatic experiences and when you remember something like this, it's really not even healthy. I can't tell you how much weight I've lost and just have been battling different things in my body on account of how sickening this makes me when I look back on this. The only reason why I'm going through this at this point is, I knew that there was a possibility that one day they could do another sequel movie. It was really a nightmare to me that it would ever be revisited. But now there's several companies that have made my nightmare now my daymare. To monitor the situation of what's happening with Amityville and different movie companies, I had set up Google email alerts so that every time the two words Amityville Horror appeared in the news, it showed up in my email and I abreast that way. And one day I opened up my email account to find a press release from a movie company, Hannibal Classics, announcing that they were getting ready to make the next Amityville Horror sequel. And it ate at me that somebody was going to do this again. And, because for me, for the last 35 years, this thing has been, told, retold, mistold, and now we're coming up into the upteenth telling. It's never going to die and go away. That was my first wish. And that's not going to be a reality. There's not a way for me to stop this movie company from doing what they're doing because they do have rights. What they thing is that they just don't care about the truth, and if they do get the rights from me, they'll just twist it. So, I had read that email. It was a movie company called Hannibal Classics announcing that they're doing the next sequel called Amityville Legacy in 3D. Oh, how nice. Didn't they already do a 3D of the Amityville series?
Well, the 3D technology is a lot better
and it was
now.
crap. and now they're just going to make more smut, and they're going to try to get your money out of your pocket, telling you, all right, here's another Amityville story, and they'll probably try to sell it to you like a real story, like they tried to in 2005. In 2005, they made that movie, and the first commercial that went on TV, the trailer, started out this way. It said this: "We found the children's diaries. This is the real story."
I'm guessing that's not even close to the truth.
Tim, not one of us kids kept a diary. No one from that movie production company contacted any one of us kids for one comment, let alone one real story. That, in any other business, is called fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And they sold that movie based on that premise. And rather quickly, that movie trailer disappeared and was cleaned up, and the one that you see now is the version that they left. But for about a month, roughly, that's how the first trailer was saying. So, in 2005, that movie that got done, I won't get into all the rights issues and things like that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it this way: if you sign if somebody puts a piece of paper in front of an 8-year-old and tells, "Sign here," and then their parents sign it and say, "All right, you got permission to depict my kid in your movie." What does a kid do about it when it's turned into something that it's not and sold as true?
You really have no recourse, I would guess.
Well, as a kid, what do you do?
I don't know. I'd have to ask what you did.
Okay. There was nothing I could do. I didn't even know what the word fiction meant versus nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
At 8 years old, what is it? What's this book you guys wrote? As kids, we were to see the read the books, watch my parents go out on interviews on TV, or read the articles. They just wanted us to grow up and be normal, is what they told us. Well, it got kind of difficult because my name, Chris, is in the book. And so it didn't matter how far away we fled from Amityville. When you wind up moving to California, and you're a little kid in a public school with a New York accent, you kind of stick out. And then, oh, what's your parents' name? And you're from New York? That movie was a smashing box office thing back when it came out. That movie went around the world. So my parents, they went on a world tour. And so I didn't know what they were saying, but, kids at school are liking me for some reason. This is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Until everybody starts saying, "You guys are liars." Well, what do you mean, a liar?
Well, that must have been worse.
I experienced something in there, but I didn't know what was being told to these people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to explain it to kids, what happened, and they're saying to me, "Well, that's not what it was in the movie. You're a liar." What? That's the kind of stuff I was dealing with. Adults are pretty harsh on people when they think that they're, even if they don't have all the information and they think you're pulling their leg, they're pretty rude. Now imagine how much ruder is our kids. So it just got really out of control. I didn't know, why people wanted to talk to me, and when they did, they basically didn't believe anything I had to say anyway. So it made for a troubling childhood just growing up with that. That was what was going on when I was outside the home, and actually dealing with that than dealing with what was going on at home. Well, it was a mess.
I was going to ask, what was the harder thing to deal with? Was it harder to deal with, because, back in the mid to late 70s, like you said, people didn't talk about paranormal activity happening at home. Did you suffer more slings and arrows for having lived in a haunted house and come forward with that information? Or was it more people who claimed that you were just a hoaxer and your family was just trying to make money? Which one was the worst worse to have to deal with.
Well, here was the thing. When certain kids said to me, "Did anything really happen?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they were having problems in their own homes, and then they'd tell me their stories. Well, those kids became my best friends because I'm not the only crazy one. The rest of the kids that had no association with anything, all they know is what they're being told in the media, what people like. They're running Katzenbach's not the first one calling this a hoax. And there's plenty of people that have been saying it all along. In fact, even the attorney that was, let's talk about those that call this a hoax and back up a little bit. And let's put it in perspective. Because everybody says, well, the lawyer said it's a hoax. Well, okay, let's remember, number one, he's a lawyer. And let's back up and see how this all came about. When my parents moved in that house, it wasn't immediate that things started happening. But once they did start happening, it was bad enough that they needed to get out of it. It was already like used as part of a defense for DeFeo that this insanity plea by I don't remember exactly the plea that they put in, but along the lines of demonic possession.
The voices told them to do it, type of thing.
Yes. And so my parents are having dealt with what they dealt with in there, are like trying to back up that, hey, listen, we went through something and that kid needs help. Even though my parents certainly did not approve of the murders, but they thought that he should at least get some help, because with what they had experienced, anybody would need help. They were looking for help. And so, they contacted DeFeo's lawyer, who was court-appointed defense attorney, a public defendant, someone that doesn't make a large income like a regular practicing lawyer. And so now this guy is seeing an opportunity with this defense that he's doing DeFeo. And my parents show up and they're saying, this guy is going to need some help because we have problems in there too. When the attorney looks at this as a business opportunity and wants to write a book and wants to cut in the guy that killed his family to 5% of a book deal, what do you think my parents should do? Did you participate in something where the guy that just murdered his 4 siblings brutally in their beds and his mom and dad is now going to get 5% of any book that you decide to do helping him?
Yeah, you're going to go out and promote that book to help him make money. Yeah.
Absolutely no way they were going to agree to that. So, basically, here's what happened next. The very stuff that, George and my mom were telling, what the heck's his name? Sorry, I'm blanking out on this guy's name.
The lawyer, William Weber. Yeah,
is the guy's name. And so, Weber's an attorney. He's a businessman. It doesn't matter which way you turn it, he's still looking at it as a business. He's turning what would have been a wrong thing. I guess it takes a special kind of guy to try to defend a murder.
Sure.
And get them off. The guy that got OJ off did a damn good job. Sort of the one that just got off, this little princess that just killed her little dog. Kaylee Anthony, Casey Anthony. See, murderers do get off, and they got pretty slick attorneys handling their business. And so when your attorney wants to give you 5% of a book deal that he's pitching. What kind of attorney do you have? He's not making much money working for the state. So let's look at motivation. This guy's been going around on his stump for all these years saying what he's been saying. Oh, we just made it up over a couple of bottles of wine. Well, I think my parents were pretty traumatized at the moment. And so if they drunk some wine, I don't really think that would be so unusual for anybody else that had a traumatic experience. Now, the amount of bottles of wine went from 3 up to 4, with each time he said it. So, between 3 people, look, I don't know how much is your limit, but, I don't know how many they really drank there. But here's what I do know. I do know that my parents went through and scared the crap out of them, that they continued and even went to their grave saying something happened to them. Now, everything that has been said did happen, I know did not happen. And so, and I know things that the book said, there's many things that George said, no, that didn't happen either. Mm-hmm. There's many things that got done in movies, like windows shattering or the glass goes flying. Well, of course there's no physical evidence of that. And if anybody is saying, oh, look, none of the windows ever had to get changed. Well, look, if you're going by the movie, you're right. Not only did they not need to be changed, but if you went by the real story, not one piece of glass broke as far as the window. So, telling me that, oh, the windows never broke, it must be a hoax. Really? There's a lot of little things that everybody's nitpicking at that never happened in the first place. And so they're trying to prove it a hoax based on, physical evidence. Yeah, I heard, that front door got ripped off. A big wooden door. I'm telling you right now, it did not get ripped off. So there's a lot of little things that, people are trying to call it a hoax because of this, because of that. And let's get back to Weber again, because he's the one that's been saying this for a long time. So now, my parents tell a story that loses its credibility based on some things that, shouldn't have been said, and somebody spiced up the story. Based on that, they call everything a lie. And this is what the public is, first off, people back then didn't talk about the paranormal. You didn't go around because you disgrace your family. Nobody wants to be looked upon that way. So, that was the sort of thing you just kept your mouth shut about. And so, here it was, late 70s, attorney, need to make some money. He's willing to cut a book deal where the murderer gets a share of the profits. And my parents would walk out on him. Well, of course, Weber would very easily be able to walk in before a judge as an attorney and say, Your Honor, I helped them make up that incredible story.
Chris, I hate to cut you off.
I am now entitled to proceeds from the movie and the books. So he's for royalties. So all he's got to do is say they made it up.
I hate to cut you off, but we do have to take a break for the news. Let's leave it at that. When we come back, I definitely want to talk some more about this, because what you're talking about here is what I've long suspected is more the problem with this story, that being William Weber. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some more inconsistencies with the book and what actually happened. I want to find out more about the inside story, about what went on in those 28 days at that house in Amityville, New York. And we will talk about that with tonight's guest, Christopher Quaratino. We'll also find out what his plans are to tell the whole story coming up as well. We'll be right back with more here on Spooky Southcoast.
First with local news, talk, and sports. This is WBSM New Bedford, Citadel Broadcasting, AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Brad Aviles. When that vintage plane crashed at the Reno Air Show yesterday, the impact shattered the aircraft, and that could pose a problem for investigators, says Howard Plagins with the NTSB.
We may not have everything to work with. That's part of what we're going to do is, when we do our detailed investigation, is to establish just how much of the system we do have.
Plagan says they managed to recover the tail, though piecing it together is going to be a challenge. Photos show part of the tail appears to be missing just before the crash, which killed the pilot and 8 others. There was another crash today at an air show in West Virginia. The pilot was killed, but luckily nobody on the ground was hurt. 2 prominent Democratic families are in mourning this weekend.
6 years ago, Kara Kennedy had fought the battle of her life against a near-fatal case of lung cancer. Her family says those treatments had left her weakened. Kennedy died after suffering a heart attack following a workout at a Washington, D.C. health club. She was just 51. That's the same age as Eleanor Mondale, who is also being remembered this weekend. The daughter of former Vice President Walter Mondale was also a fighter, battling brain cancer for the past 6 years. She died at her home in Minnesota. Sharon Reed, ABC News.
Authorities believe they will eventually turn up human remains in the Utah desert where cadaver dogs picked up a scent.
Those dogs are what found it for us. If it had simply been humans on foot or on horseback, ATV, whatever, I don't think they would have given it a second look. There was nothing obvious to indicate that we needed to be there except for those dogs.
West Valley City Police Lieutenant Bill Merritt says they've ended the search for the night. They'll resume tomorrow. Forget the great pumpkin, even an average gourd may be hard to find this year. Northeastern states reporting a shortage because Hurricane Irene destroyed hundreds of pumpkin patches across the region. Heavy rain 2 weeks earlier caused an outbreak of fungus. Wholesale pumpkin prices have doubled in some locations. You're listening to ABC News.
If I set it free, I wonder how far it will go.
We're CenturyLink, a new kind of broadband company linking Americans across the country to what matters most. We're committed to providing better service with consistently fast speeds and 5-year price lock guarantees. And since we're locally operated, you'll be met by honest, straightforward service delivered by real people who are happy to help you explore what's next. See how far you might go. CenturyLink, your link to what's next. Find out more at CenturyLink.com.
Oh, give me freedom.
Jay Farner here with Quicken Loans. Are rates going up? Are they going down? You know, no one really knows. But at Quicken Loans, we've got an amazing way to protect you from that uncertainty. It's our new Quicken Loans Rate Drop Advantage program. Simply close a loan with us, and then, if rates drop within the next 7 years, you have the option to refinance, and we'll cover a majority of your closing fees. Call Quicken Loans now at **QL. That's a toll-free call from your mobile phone. Call **QL. That's **75.
Refinance subject to credit approval. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
A World War II veteran has just now gotten his honorable discharge. The story from ABC's Chuck Siebertson.
This is the news that electrified the world. Unconditional surrender.
But the news that electrified Melvin Dwork of New York City is his honorable discharge from the Navy 67 years after being booted out during World War II when it was discovered he was gay. The change follows the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Dwork's now 89.
Good luck, soldier. You've earned your country's gratitude.
He's now eligible for benefits he was long denied, including medical care and a military burial. Chuck Siebertson, ABC News, New York.
Another Yankees star reaches a career milestone. The story from ABC's John Clossy in New York.
The Yankees closed out another win today as an icon made history.
Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman stand alone, tied with 601 career saves, the most in Major League history.
Michael Kay on the Yes Network as the 41-year-old closer saved another, his 42nd this season. How big was this save?
The most important thing is that we won the game, and that's bottom line. We won the game. I don't think it's one. I mean, to me, they all, huge.
John Clossy, ABC News.
Atlantic City, New Jersey police raid the home of a suspected drug dealer, and yes, some marijuana was there. But cops also found 2 small alligators inside the residence. They were turned over to state wildlife officials. Nobody bitten. This is ABC News.
Trying to sell your old car? Instead, donate your vehicle to Heritage for the Blind. Pickup is free and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-895-8035. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats, whether they run or not. Donate your vehicle and you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call 1-800-895-8035. That's 1-800-895-8035.
Brad Wheelis, ABC News.
My name is Sue Smith. I'm 38 years old, and I work at a graphic design company, which is funny, because I couldn't even draw a stick figure when I was a kid. But I met someone who told me, you know what? You can do anything if you really want to. And if the teenage me were here, she'd tell you,
I wouldn't be into drawing and art if it wasn't for Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Most kids from my neighborhood don't get into art. They get into trouble. But I was lucky because my big sister showed me early on that I didn't have to be like most people. And to the young me,
that meant a lot. My big sister's name is Sheila, and Sheila is the reason that this 8-year-old grows up to have an amazing job as a graphic designer.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child, and that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Patriots, Chargers, Sunday at 4 on AM 1420 WBSM.
One in 12 children in Uganda is left alone. This year, Citadel Broadcasting is supporting the worthwhile cause of Ray of Hope in Africa to build a children's home, medical center, and school. Every dollar you give will help a child in need whose only chance for a better life is through your contributions. For more information about Ray of Hope in Africa and how you can help, go to rayofhopeinafrica.org. Ray of Hope in Africa is a division of Humanitarian Hands Foundation.
I see a great need in my community.
So Richard Washington set out to meet that need by working with youth in the juvenile justice system, joining thousands of other volunteers. If you're 55 and older, you can use the skills that help you through a lifetime of learning, giving, teaching, and working. Go to getinvolved.gov or call 1-800-424-8867 to find out how you can volunteer, impact your community, and make our country stronger.
Retired people have a lot to offer because we have life experience.
What are you going to do with your lifetime of experience? Go to getinvolved.gov today or call 1-800-424-8867. We have so much to offer, and our nation needs us. Make a difference for generations. This message is brought to you by the Corporation for National and Community Service.
Hi, I'm Josh Holloway. Growing up near the Great Smoky Mountains, the national parks have always been a part of my life. They're living, breathing monuments to our nation's history and culture and need our care and support. I can't imagine a day when these natural treasures may not be around to enjoy, but years of underfunding, pollution, and climate change have taken their toll. So join me and the National Parks Conservation Association in ensuring our national parks are available for future generations. For more, visit preservetheparks.com.
What I am about to say shakes the very foundation of every medical precept you hold dear. We have entered the realm of the supernatural.
Turn on all your lights, lock the doors, and pull down the shades. Spooky Southcoast is back.
All right, welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky Southcoast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz. And we are going to be getting back into the discussion about the true story of the Amityville Horror with our guest Christopher Quaratino, formerly known as Christopher Lutz, in just a few moments. Just want to make a couple quick announcements. That being that tickets are still on sale for our Haunted History Night in Wareham on October 15th. If you go to spookysouthcoast.com/event, or if you click right on the Haunted History Night link right on the front page of our site, you can find out more information about what you're going to get. But it's going to be a fantastic night of investigating some of the most historic haunts in Wareham, including the Fearing Tavern, which has never been open to the public for investigation, and some other buildings that have not been investigated at all, even by us. So it's only $99 per ticket, so make sure that you get them now while they're still available by going to spookysouthcoast.com. And also coming up on the 25th is the South Coast Paranormal and Psychic Fair at the Seaport Inn and Marina. That will be just $10 for a ticket, or $9 if you buy them in advance. If you go to scparanormalfair.com, that's scparanormalfair with an E at the end of fair.com, and we will give away a pair of tickets at the end of the show. If you want to stay tuned, I think we're giving away two pairs of tickets. by the end of the show. So just stay tuned, and we'll do that at the end of the hour because we want to get right back into the discussion about the Amityville Horror case. And we were talking, Chris, before the news break about William Weber and about this concocted story. And I wonder how much contact, and you may not know the answer to this, but how much contact Weber had with Jay Anson when they were formulating that story.
As best I know, they had no contact between them, but I don't know the full details. I do know that those were, in Weber's eyes, a competing project. I mean, Weber had this intention to make this book and have this as part of one of the endings. And so, basically what had happened was, Weber presented this deal to my parents, and Weber's got his goals in mind, and he's going to make money, and he needs the Lutzes on board. And then they turn down the contract because they see that DeFeo, the murderer, is going to get paid for killing his family, a portion of the proceeds. So my parents bail on him. At the time, Weber already had some other people that were going to write it. I don't recall the names of all the parties, so I'll leave those names out of it. Mm-hmm. But there was a writer involved. And so they took the story that was the basis of how they wanted to do Weber's book with my parents when they wouldn't sign a deal, and they wrote it up and had it out in Good Housekeeping. And so my parents' story was made public in Good Housekeeping from the writer that was working for William Weber. And my parents weren't happy with the way that story had been told, but now it's been made public. Well, and so my parents tried to straighten out the story, and they want the book written right, and so they somehow lost touch with Jay Anson, who's got a history of doing documentaries. He should be able to do a good job. He does documentaries. Mm-hmm. And so Anson gets the job to write the book. Anson writes the book, and it looks like a diary with every day of what exactly took place. That's not accurate. And so that goes out and is with the name on the front of it, a true story. So now everybody's scrutinizing what Jay Anson had written versus what was written in the Good Housekeeping. The Good Housekeeping one was written without their permission. Now Anson's writing with their permission, but Anson just writes it like how he feels it should be written.
And poorly, by the way.
Himself.
I want to add that in. Poorly written, by the way.
Well, it did manage to sell quite a few, so yeah. No matter how poorly you say it was.
You can't argue with the result, yeah.
Right. So, Anson writing that book was completely a separate project from Weber. I don't know that they had any contact. I wasn't into who was talking to who back then, but looking at it from today's perspective, I can't imagine that they had any contact until later when Weber wanted a piece of the action. So,
did you have any contact with Anson while he was writing the book? Did he ever interview you
no,
or your brother and
I
sister?
don't think I've ever even met the man personally. I mean, if I did, it was, these are my children, and then we were all sent off to go play in our room. So, it wasn't. I don't recall any interviews. No, basically, my parents, I don't even think they met with them too much until the book was actually written, and it was time to go over the editing. George had part in that, but even by then, we were, I believe, we were in California already. By the time that was done, and Anson's office was at 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City, where his office was while he wrote the book, The Amityville Horror. So that's just kind of a weird thing there that's where his office is.
Definitely. As far as you know, then what was the process of him writing the book? Was he conducting interviews with your parents and then
my parents spoke into a recording device and then gave him those tapes.
Okay.
And based on those tapes is how he, so I've never heard those tapes, and so I don't know because I eventually read that book as an adult, and we can talk about that maybe if we have time. But basically, Anson wrote the book based on what he heard on the tapes. So having not heard the tapes, I don't know if I should be blaming George or if I should be blaming Anson. Either way, it's wrong. What's written in that book, and I don't care who is responsible. It came down to, my parents are the ones who should have been controlling the story, and then this is what goes out, and so now they're responsible as the party who owns the story, and it's about them to be sure that it goes out truthfully. So whether or not there was any doctoring of the story as it's related to Anson, or if Anson did his embellishing only, I couldn't tell you. All I know is what I read in that book is not what happened. You folks have not heard what really happened, and that's what needs to be told. Now let's go into why I'm actually saying it now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really didn't want to talk about this at all. In fact, in 2005, when the History Channel contacted me, wanting to get the first time ever interview with any of the Lutz kids from the Amityville Horror, I hung up on them. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to talk about this story. I had already changed my name years earlier and was trying to just, deal with life as it came and, be me, not the Amityville kid. It was something that, the memories of it were tightly pushed into this closet in the back of my mind, and it wasn't an area that I would, just dwell upon or think on as little as I could.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough thing to forget about, especially that every year around Halloween that movie would be on TV again as you were flipping through the dials. It never went away. The public was always intrigued by it. There was always a new documentary coming up or something going on. And, but then there was a part in my life where, I had run away from home at 16, managed to finish up high school and join the Army. I was in a special forces infantry unit, the 10th Mountain Division. We spent 9 months out of the in-world. I wasn't down at the local video store finding out what all these cheesy smut straight-to-video movies of Amityville had been made. So as an adult, when I'm finding out there's already been, 8 movies, I was shocked. I was like, what? And then I started finding out what the storylines were about, and it was just ridiculous, man. Come on. You bought a Honda. Okay. And you killed it by throwing it out the window and it lands in the freaking ocean. Give me a break. It's just, all this stuff that just got... Here's what happened. The first movie was a success. My parents had another book going, Amityville Horror 2, and another company decides they're going to capitalize upon the success of the first film, and they make a second movie, utilizing the name, and then trying to depict the DeFeos in a fictional way. And so immediately, my parents' story got jumped upon by others trying to make money. And so, anyway, everybody wanted a piece of the action, and everybody figured out a way to do it. Whether they had to call it a hoax, whether they needed to steal the name and just turn it into something where they profited by making a movie based on the title. The first movie did $86 million in the late 70s.
Yeah, that's huge money.
Huge money. I mean, how much was a gallon of gas back then?
Well, and you say that, you talk about all the movies that have been out, and of course there's been numerous television specials, television documentaries. I don't know how much time you spend reliving this through the eyes of others by watching these shows and these movies, but has any of these come...
I'm disgusted about it, and I just try to leave it all behind me. It's just trying to go on with my life.
Has any of it ever come close to what you experienced?
Here's one fundamental thing that's completely missed. In 2005, when and I'll show you I'll establish for you how I figured it out, what was missing from the story that makes it make sense. In the year 2000, I get approached by these guys wanting me to do this History Channel. A guy named Rick Osuna is calling me up, representing himself as though he works for the History Channel, saying he's, look, we want you to come on this documentary. We'll be traveling to Scottsdale, Arizona to interview your mom. My mom was ill. If anybody's seen that History Channel documentary, she couldn't travel. That's why they all came here. And so these guys know they're coming to Scottsdale. I've been living with my mom for years, making sure she still had a roof over her head so that my little sisters could continue to go to school where they were. That's why I was there. After the Army, after I got out and then got called back a year later to ship out for Desert Storm, and then I came back from that, I was living up in Aspen, Colorado. Mom was ill. She needed help. And I manned up and took care of what, by then George and my mom were divorced. Again, with still kids in the house that still needed to go to school, and she contracted the thing called valley fever. They had to cut off the lower section of her lung, fold it over, stapled it shut, and sent her home. She needed help. That's why I was there. So these guys calling me up want me to do this History Channel documentary. Oh, nobody's ever talked to the children. This would be great for our documentary. We'd really like to get you on. And I hung up on him. I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. I didn't want to talk about it. And he didn't want to take no for an answer. So each week I'm getting a call back, trying to overcome my last objection. Well, here, and basically it came down to this. It's the History Channel. It's your opportunity to straighten out the story. And I dwelled upon that long and hard. And, here is the opportunity. This is the History Channel. Here's my chance to straighten out the story. Look, I don't know how long you guys are going to give me to tell what I got to say, but, if you'll give me a list of questions up front, I'll consider doing it with you. And so they sent me out that list of questions, and in the list of questions, one of them is asking me this: what's the difference between what really happened in the house and what it says in the book? Well, I couldn't answer the question. I was going to look like an idiot on TV because I hadn't read the book, and I couldn't answer the question. And so I got a hold of one of the copies of the book, and I read it for the first time as an adult that could understand what he was reading. And Tim, imagine this, man. Imagine I'm holding your family photo in my hands, and I'm telling your listening audience what happened to you in your family photo album. How accurate do you think I'd be?
No, I see what you mean.
Okay, because this book that I'm holding in my hands is basically, on the front cover, it says a true story. The words create a picture of a time and a place and a thing and an activity that involves me. It's like I'm supposedly looking at a snapshot from my family album. Each page as I go by is describing a time, a place, thing, and everything. And I'm reading this thing, and I cannot believe what I'm reading. I'm getting pissed with every page I turn. And then I'm starting to see how this thing's developing into a story where George is depicted as a victim of this house and a hero to the family, getting us away from it all in the end. And I am going off. I cannot believe what I'm reading. This is page after page of...
That's not how you would describe it having happened?
No, not at all. And I am livid, pissed off. And like I was saying, like, my mom was ill, and we were brought up to respect your mom. And I had never raised my voice to my mom, but this had me over the edge. I could not believe what I was reading, and my mom can't understand why I'm so pissed off, and I'm yelling at her. She's trying to get me to calm down. She's in my room, sitting on my bed. I'm sitting at my desk in my office chair, and I handed her the book. I had it open to a certain page. I don't remember which story it was about. There's so many that were wrong. And I said to her, Mom, read this. And I watched as she read down the page. And by the time she got to the end of the page, Tim, her jaw had dropped. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, that's how this whole book is. I'm watching her. She can't believe what she just read. And this is the book that she's been going around the world saying it's a true story, along with George.
For 25 years at this point, yeah.
Yes. And Mom's like astonished what she's reading. And I knew who was in charge of telling this story. And it was George. Mom basically was trying to care for us kids. We were a mess. And George was that way. He was a take charge guy. anything having to do with business. He felt that he was the one that needed a hand. And so, Mom didn't really have her hand on the editing button. So here's, so now I'm understanding this with Mom. I'm still pissed off. And it's like 3 days before this History Channel interview. And I'm asking my mom, what is George doing? I had a difficult time with George, and that was why I left at 16. I'm not going to get into everything why I left, but it was not the kind of a situation that I felt was, I felt that I could do better elsewhere on my own at 16.
Okay.
So here it was, it's now I'm an adult, and I'm reading what this thing that you've been spreading around the world and all these other movies that have been coming out. Well, I didn't know what was going on, and now these guys want me to come in and talk about it. And now my mom's relaying to me that George is getting ready to make another movie, and that this guy that is calling me up, wanting me to come in to do this History Channel interview, does not work for the History Channel History Channel. He's making an independent production that's going to air on the History Channel. And the guy that's calling me up, trying to get me to come in and give him an interview, everything that happened to me, for $200, is writing the next book for George. And the guy that's going to be interviewing me in the interview is going to be writing the next movie. And they want me to come in for $200. And they're working with George. I can't believe what they're trying to do. This is unbelievable. I can't believe they're even going to talk about the story again. I'm pissed off, unbelievable. So I kept my commitment to come in for that interview, but what I did was I walked in with my own video camera. My best friend was running it, and I began to interview them first and got them to admit the very things that I just figured out, that they're trying to get my story from me for $200. And you're not telling me you're going to write a new book. You're not telling me you're getting ready to make a new movie. And all this is on tape. One day I'll put that up. And so that interview did not go very, very congenial. That was the first time I was seeing George in I don't know how long. And here now he can face me as a man and see if he wants to treat me like he used to as a kid. So it was rather confrontational between George and I. And on top of that, to boot, that, I'm reading this thing for the first time and this is what you told the world was true? No. And what's this movie about that you guys are getting ready to make? And Rick blurts out, oh, it's about a son returned to the house. I'm like, what? And Daniel Farron realizes that I had figured out and Rick screwed up by telling me that they were getting ready to make a movie about a son returning to the house. Well, if you're going to be calling it the Amityville Horror and it's based on the first book, that title, and there was only 2 boys, you're talking about me. And I don't like it. Get a new gig back then, and they decided not to. They both went about their business, and it turns out that today, the very guy that tried to steal my story back then for $200 is the one that wrote the screenplay for this new movie by Bob Weinstein that's going to be produced by Jason Blum, who did Paranormal Activity.
And this is the Lost Tapes movie, right? The one that's for Miramax?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So and I found out later that in that movie that had George's approval on it, he was going to have his son return to the house and kill him through telepathy in the end of his movie.
Wow. That's and when you said the people that were working,
so the very guy that wrote that is now, look, when George died in 2006, I thought the horror was over.
Mm-hmm.
But his contracts live on. Daniel Farron's is the last of what they had dubbed themselves the Demon Dream Team. He strengthened himself by aligning himself with some of the bigger names in horror. Up till then, Daniel Farron's claim to fame was Halloween 6. Started out as a comic book writer.
Well, we don't disparage Halloween 6 because that's the Danielle Harris one. So, but that's a different story. But I mean, and you said Rick Osuna was involved in that too.
Right, and that's the book that is based upon the the DeFeos Died documentary that Ryan Katzenbach was working on. Well, back then, at this point, Rick was working closely with George. The foreword to the book that he was going to write for George is online somewhere, and it says that all the information that he needed to verify, he had verified, and was fully behind the story. Basically, I showed up after all that and went onto their forum chat room where Rick Osuna, along with Daniel Ferens and their other team members of the Demon Dream team, were getting to go into a full-on marketing thing, and they were gathering people into their forum and telling them all these things that were George, the true story. And I showed up and acted just as though I was just anybody. I started asking regular questions like anybody else would. You know, what happened about this or that, and then let them warm up to me. And my the name that I was using was Clandestine 27, Clandestine 27. Basically, I'd sent in an acronym and asked all these questions, got them to start answering, and then. So has anybody talked to the kids? What do they have to say? Do they agree with their parents? And I sat and I watched as all these guys started saying, oh yeah, the kids all agree with their parents. And then I came in with my other computer under my own name and started answering the questions that I had just asked in front of them as yes. And started turning the conversation to my own favor and telling what was really going on as though I was. So I made buffoons of them right in front of their fans. And so there was no lost. You know, it was war. I was flat out not putting up with any more crap. And I did my best to rattle the ship. And the things that I was saying cast doubt upon George's story. And so Rick, basically, my objective was to go in there and divide and conquer. Well, Rick splintered off from George and decided to hook up with the lady Geraldine DeFeo, Gates. You know, she never. Look, there's a lot of information that's been put out about her. There's a lot more that you can do research on. She says she was married to DeFeo at the time of the murders. But court records show that she was married to somebody else. So, you know, I kind of got questions in my own mind. Look, I've never met the lady. I don't want to wish her any bad vibes, but don't start calling my story a hoax when I find out that you're lying.
Yeah, true.
You've never heard my story. You heard my parents' story.
Well,
there's a very different thing that happened in there. Because here's what I was looking at. I know we're running out of time, so I want to start getting on some points.
Sure.
Look, here's what happened when I read that book. Not only was I seeing things in there that did not happen, the things that made this whole story make sense were not in there. Because George is being portrayed as a victim, a victim of this haunted house and a hero to his family, saving them in the end. But the way I knew it was George was practicing things dealing with the occult, calling things up, and when we left that house, that stuff followed us.
Well, what are you talking about? Because we've been told that your parents practiced transcendental meditation, and that the church had suspicions that might have played into what happened. But it sounds like you're talking about something far worse than TM.
Well, first off, let's talk about how TM is practiced. Are you guys familiar with it at all?
Yes.
Yep, a little bit,
okay.
But our audience might not be.
Okay. In the process of practice of transcendental meditation, here's what they would have you to do. You would sit down on the floor with your legs crossed, your feet or your hands on your knees in an upright position. In some instances, you'll put your first three fingers together, your thumb with the first two fingers. And what you're doing is you're going to sit in an upright posture with your chakras open. Well, what are your chakras? Those are the energy centers within your body. And what you're going to do is you're going to sit and just kind of look to clear your mind, and then you're going to begin to repeat a word over and over and over. What you're doing by repeating the word over and over and over is you're repeating with one word. Now, the word that you are told to repeat a lot of people don't know this part. The word that you're to repeat is actually the name of a spirit. And what you're trying to do, calling the name of this spirit over and over and over and over again, is to call and conjure the spirit to come into you. Whether this spirit is for peace, love, joy, happiness, calmness, these are like you would think would be good things. Now, there's a reason why they have you sit that way with your chakras open. You're looking to have this spirit enter you through these chakras, through your energy centers. Now, what's going to happen if you start calling on names that aren't joy, love, and peace, and they are the name of spirits?
Or just the fact that you're opening yourself up. It doesn't matter what you're calling. The fact that you're opening up those centers, kind of anything could walk through that door.
Well, now when the word that you're speaking over and over is a known demon that is like as dark as they come, and you're using a practice that is used so that you can have a spirit enter into you, what have you just done?
Invited
And
possession.
now you're going to do that in the house where a mass murder just happened?
Only 13 months before. Now,
so now was this intentional, or was just George into these different things? Well, I'll discuss that further later, but contrary to what Anson put out in this, George was not unaware of the occult.
What you're saying,
paranormal phenomena was not a new thing to George. And so to play it off as though he was a victim of this house and a hero, responsibility for this, the thing, I'm just a victim. And we ran away, got my family out of here, look. I'm a good guy.
Well, what do you think?
I'm a hero. Now, of course, if it had been spoken that, George is doing what he's doing, people would have looked at this story completely different. They would have said, what do you think was going to happen, dumbass?
Absolutely.
You got what you deserved. You call up the devil. Who do you think is going to show up? And so when we left that house, those things followed us. So, because it was attached to him and now our family. And so, yeah, nobody else in the house has had a problem. Yes. Now, do you understand why? Yeah, that could have very well had all sorts of stuff going on in it at the time. So reason to the murders. There's not a reason that it couldn't be haunted. Now, for George to be doing what he was doing, now you've got the scenario for what could be a perfect storm. A tragedy that exists, and now you're going to bring in these other dark spirits.
Well,
so when we leave, and it follows us, to me, as an adult, looking back, I'm a skeptical guy. I've heard a lot of people's stories. And, I know the way that my own stepdad peppered ours. So, don't I don't like it when somebody bullshits me.
Well,
and so I'm not looking to do that with you guys. This is just the way that I see it as an adult looking back at it. I've gone through 11 years of investigation now, trying to explain to myself what had happened.
I have to ask you this, though. If George was perhaps trying to conjure this, can you speculate as to for what reason he would do that? That's question one. And question two is, did he continue these practices after you left that house?
Father Ray got on him. Father Ray was the priest that was in it, has testified that he was slapped and told to get out. Father Ray continued to stay a big part of our lives and counseled George on a number of things. One of those was specifically what he had been doing. And so, yeah, George did stop that.
Okay.
At the advice from that priest. That priest stayed involved in our lives for a very long time, and we needed him for a very long time. This wasn't something that just ended when we moved out. For me, that was just the beginning.
Why was it started, though?
Yeah, for what reason was he trying to conjure these spirits?
It'd be unfair for me to just say that, categorically, this is what that man's thoughts and intentions were,
Mhm.
because I honestly don't know what his thoughts and intentions were.
Okay.
There's some things I could speculate, but he's not here to defend himself any longer. I mentioned while he was alive publicly that he was involved in the occult, and his response basically was he wrapped me up in a lawsuit.
Well, I guess that kind of speaks for itself to some degree. But what are your thoughts about his involvement in his later years with the paranormal community? He worked very closely with a number of people in the paranormal community later on, and it's almost like, it was a new angle to keep perpetuating that story. Did you look at that as with any kind of strange eye?
Well, he I told you what the movie that he wanted to make was about.
Yep.
About a son telling him through telepathy in the end of the movie. And that was only one of 3 movies he wanted to do. He had a 3 motion picture deal with Daniel Farrens, and this is the first one that there is coming to fruition now in association with Weinstein's company. I know that we're down to the last 19 minutes before the hour. So there's so much I just want to, there's so much to try to straighten out with the story. There's no way we could do it even in this 2-hour show.
No, and there's so many questions that I'll always have for you.
So much has been said. And so I kind of want to let people know that, number one, the reason that I'm coming forward out now is that these, not only is there those 2 movie companies that I've already talked about, but there was 2 documentaries that were in the works. One by my brother, who's not, really in charge of the way the story's being told. I hope that the guy editing it does it better justice than the other people that have tried to edit together my family story, So I don't know how that's going to come out. My brother and I have not spoken in years. Danny sold out to MGM in 2005. I refused. I was offered $70,000 by MGM, and I flatly turned it down because what they wanted to do was buy my rights so that they could fictionalize this story further and even make more sequels. And if I was not happy, there was a clause in the end that was a gag order. If you're not happy and you speak it out publicly, that's a breach of contract, and now we're going to sue you because we screwed you, and now we're going to screw you again. I was not stupid enough to have a contract like that, but my brother insisted that I was stupid if I didn't, because he was going to get $85,000 at the end of the week, and up to $170,000 depending on how it didn't do. I said, I'm not the stupid one, and I told him to get out, and we haven't hardly spoken since. That's unfortunate, but that's the way it went. Mm-hmm. So when I was asked to be involved in my brother's documentary, and I knew that he'd already sold out, well, that means that anything he says, even though MGM's not here, well, the Weinsteins now own those rights, and so anything that Danny says in his documentary can immediately be developed into a film and fictionalized because he already sold them that right. I'm not going to contribute to anything getting further fictionalized. I didn't want to, I was kind of like pretty pissed off that things were happening. I love my brother, don't get me wrong. The thing is, we have a different point of view of what should happen with the true story. And then I see Ryan Reynolds running around, tooting his horn, and he's a director now and compared his film to the Titanic, in the filming of it. Remember what the Titanic? Anyway, if I'm very interested to see what research, I'm very interested to see Ryan Katzenbach's film. So part that I really is what the forensic evidence is of how that murder actually happened. Because, look, 6 people all shot in that house with a Marlin. Look, I don't know if you guys understand just how loud that gun is.
But, I'm a range safety officer, yeah.
look, the father got two rounds, the mother got one, the other brothers each got one, I think. So that's 5 rounds, and then they're going to go to the other daughter on that same floor. There's 6 rounds, and then there's going to be another person upstairs. Look, 1 round of that thing going off. I don't care how sleepy you are, I would expect that you're going to hear something. Well, so there's some elements to this that I think may be able to be explained. I don't consider everything that happens to be paranormal myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not, hey, look, I scrutinized George's story. There's a lot of things that he said, and I've got some. I'll bring these things up later. Look, I'm calling bullshit. If anybody in this family would have called this whole thing a hoax, it would have been me. George sued me. He left my mom in the condition that she was, and let's not even get into all that. I left home, like I mentioned, because I felt that I could do better elsewhere. I did not get along with George. I felt as though I was treated as a stepchild. And that doesn't, I don't know if that means anything to you guys. Some of those that are out there that have dealt with that situation. And the guy was a former Marine, and he was heavy-handed. So, they had a lot of disdain for the guy. How easy it would be for me to just say the whole thing's a hoax and just have it over and done with. Look, I didn't want to talk about it, but, I also am a man of integrity. And that wouldn't be true either, to call this a hoax. I did experience quite a bit, and I still deal with stuff to this day because of what was brought upon our family. And I'm not just talking about, books and movies and that kind of stuff. There's still a paranormal element that happens in my life almost cyclically on a cycle. And all I can do is deal with it each time it happens.
Is it as negative as what was in the Amityville house?
Oh, wait till you hear it. I'm not even gonna look. I get chills when I talk about what just happened recently.
And do you feel like for speaking out now, I understand the reasons why you feel you need to tell your story. Do you fear repercussions from this entity, from this force, for doing so?
You know what? I don't know that it'd make any difference if I told it or not. Because if it's going to be on a cycle, it's going to be back. I might as well just kick its ass every time and then show other people how to kick its ass too. Because this is a story, for me, it's a story about spiritual warfare. It's a story about the emotional roller coaster that you go through to finally get to the place of faith and figuring out what you got to do to be able to deal with it and maintain any kind of sanity. I'm actually going into an area that I wasn't planning on discussing right now, but that's where this is going. Okay, because it didn't end for me in Amityville. That, for me, was the beginning.
Do you want to expand on that, or do you want to wait?
No, there's plenty to talk about later, but we're we close out the honor here in about, 12 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about what I'm doing now.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
As I had mentioned, there's different movie companies that are producing. There's 3. I had issued a challenge to Hollywood. When I found out that they were going to make these movies, I challenged them. I says, look, to me, I was saying to myself, I can't stop them. Look, they have rights. They're exercising their rights. In a court of law, I can't walk in and get them to stop. I can't pull an injunction unless I can prove they are depicting me. And, there's no way for me to prove it unless I can, you got to do this thing of sanction and all that. And, man, I don't got money for lawyers. They got what, 20 of them on staff? They just spent enough money to buy the collection from MGM. You think they can't afford to pay some attorneys that, one that I can afford?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chris.
So there was nothing I could do was figure out a different way to beat them. And I know that I can tell a creepier story than they can. There's no question in my mind about it. Absolutely zero. This story has never been told the way it really happened, and I think people not only deserve that, I think they'll be a bit freaked out when they do understand why what happened actually happened. And then how do you deal with all that after it goes through, follows you around for life, not just in, you know, your own personal life, but those that are around you too. Look, it was tough enough just dealing with them doing what they're doing, and then I'm dealing with the paranormal in my real life at the same time. So, you know, it wasn't until I was able to fight the things that are in the dark and that are unseen that it seems no big deal anymore to take on Hollywood.
Chris, some of your skeptics would say that what you're doing now is you're just trying to get your final cents out of it, your last bit of money. That I personally think it's yourself trying to get your own story out, but other people look at you as probably looking to get your 50 cents out of it. That's what.
That's fair for somebody to say that has absolutely no knowledge of what's been said up to now. Now, if it was your life story that had been all over,
right, I'd want to get it fixed
around the world.
But I'm saying that's what other critics would say.
Those people, if their life story had been blasted all around the world and it was not truly what happened, and you know, here's another angle to this. You know, if you guys could tell me what happened to that guy that jumped out of that plane all those years ago with all that loot,
D.B.
all that
Cooper,
money that couldn't be found, D.B. Cooper.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear that story. If you could tell me with absolute certainty who killed John F. Kennedy all these years later, I'd sure want to know. Because there's been a lot of theories on all of those. I can tell you the answer to those. I can tell you the answer to what really happened in Amityville. And if you think I'm just cashing in, well, next time you walk in, I just walked into Walgreens, my local pharmacy, and up on the countertop was these stupid pens. All you had to do is push the back end of the button, and you could hear, what's that chick from Jersey Shore's name? Her voice on the back of a pen, and the other characters on it. For $10, you can hear them laugh on the backside of your, you know. So you know, if I shouldn't even compare my story to that, because that's what would be called catching me. If you had some stupid trinket that you're gonna like selling to people, that's called last ditch effort catching yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sell you a trinket. I'm telling you the true story. If you want to hear it, great. If you don't, move along. There's plenty of other bullshit you can listen to.
Well, I mean, we are coming up on the end of the show here.
Okay, we're down to less than 7 minutes, so let's just get on with what's happening in my life now. I called a challenge to the Hollywood producers saying this. Now, what you do, you are good. But when it comes to the Amityville Horror and what happened after, I can tell a creepier story than you. And I'm calling a contest. And we're going to do this in the vein of American Idol, where the public casts their vote, determining the outcome and the ultimate winner.
It's a good idea, but have you heard back from anybody?
Yeah, the only word out of Hollywood was another movie company announcing they're making a movie also named Amityville. That one's Amityville Haunted. So now there's 3 movies coming out of Hollywood. They haven't answered my call, but I'll move it on with the challenge anyway, because the people still get to vote. I don't care if they step up or not. Here's how you can look more into this. On to www.amityvillehorrorchallenge.com and find me on the Facebook too.
So Amityville Horror Challenge.
Those guys, I'm sorry?
I just want to repeat the website, AmityvilleHorrorChallenge.com.
Correct. AmityvilleHorrorChallenge.com. And I'm also on the Facebook by the very same name. And on the Facebook page, if you'll like it, as I put out, it'll appear on your personal page. So you'll be able to keep up. I'm going to try to keep the updates to a minimum, but there's new people coming all the time. So I don't want to send you guys so much information that you're tired of me. but at the same time, I'm still looking to grow at the same time, and I need to post. But just like it, and as this thing develops, I'll be able to put out more information. Part of Hollywood not stepping up and answering my challenge, now I've increased my challenge. Not only am I saying that I can tell a creepier story than you, I've picked my title. And the title of my book is The Creepiest Story of All Time. And I'm going to back that up with a creepy or your money back guarantee. Anybody want to your story? That's how confident I am. I get chills when I tell my story. I don't doubt that you will, or at least find it creepy. So much so am I confident that I'm offering a creepy or your money back guarantee, something that Hollywood will never match. And I'm coming out, I'm starting last and I'm out first. Look forward to hearing from me one real life creepy story, live, uncut, edited, a fireside chat from the fire pit in my backyard with hot chocolate in hand, October 30th, Halloween Eve. It's going to be a webcast, $5 creepy or your money back guarantee pay-per-view.
And you'll have
Now I'm not just trying to do this to get your money. Here's what I'm going to do with that money that I do get from the pay-per-view. I'm gonna start my own production company, become my own executive producer, and keep control of this story until it's told exactly the way it needs to be told in a format that's competitive with Hollywood and beat them at the very thing they think they do best. So Eve, October 30th, fireside chat, first time ever, one of the real life kids from the Amityville Horror are going to tell one real life creepy story, offering creepy or your money back.
There you go. Can't go wrong with that. And that's going to be on AmityvilleHorrorChallenge.com. Stay tuned to that website for all the updates. Before we let you go, Chris, I do want to ask one question. We didn't really get into a lot of the specifics about what went on in those 28 days. Hopefully sometime, once you tell your story in the way that you want to do it, you can come back and share more of it with us. But I want to ask you just one thing, and that's looking back at it all and looking back at what your family went through and what you've suffered as a result of it. I guess I have to say, even though you had very little choice being 7 years old, are you sorry for the time that you spent there and the effect it had in your life?
I don't know what my life would have been like had it been different.
Mm-hmm.
Who I've become today, I'm not disappointed with. I walk upright before my God as best I can. Every one of us is sinners, but we try to do what's right. I went on to join the military, sought to defend our country and do what was right that way. I stepped up when my mom was ill and tried to do what was right there. I stepped up and did the right thing when I thought the story should not be twisted and refused $170,000. And now I see these movie companies doing what they're getting ready to do, and I feel that I'm doing the right thing now. Because for a man to know what to do but does not do it, for that man it is sin. For me, I know that the story needs to be straightened out. I'd like to be quiet about it, but I can't, and do it in good conscience. This story's been told the way it has for 35 years. It's probably going to never die, and it's going to go forward. I either got to straighten it out now or forever hold my peace. The thing is, I have no peace about it, and so I'll be putting my peace into it.
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher Quaratino, for joining us, formerly known as Christopher Lutz, the true story of the Amityville Horror. Stay tuned to AmityvilleHorrorChallenge.com for more updates. We've got to go. We're up against the clock here, but we'll be back next week, and we'll talk about the Southcoast Paranormal and Psychic Fair. If you want to win 2 pairs of tickets, we'll take the first 2 callers at 508-996-0500 or 1-877-996-1420, and we'll give you 2 free tickets. So until next week, for Matt Costa, for Matt Moniz, for Chris Balzano, I'm Tim Weisberg. We want you all to stay spooktacular.
Talk and sports. This is WBSM New Bedford, Citadel Broadcasting, AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. A big problem for federal safety investigators looking into the Reno, Nevada air show crash is that the vintage World War II era fighter plane was smashed to bits on impact. ABC's Jim Ryan is at the scene.
Some of the most crucial pieces are impossibly small, a reflection of the horrific impact of a modified World War II fighter into the tarmac.
This accident took only a few seconds to occur. It is going to take the NTSB months to not only put the factual information together, but analyze it.
Investigator Mark Rosekind says not all the pieces are present. Some parts were disintegrated in the crash. Others may have been carried off by souvenir seekers as they were rushed from the scene. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Reno.
The crash killed the pilot and 8 spectators. Today, another crash at another air show, this time in West Virginia, also killing the pilot, but nobody on the ground was injured. Cadaver-sniffing dogs have picked up a scent in the Utah desert, and police say they're hoping to turn up human remains. West Valley City Police Lieutenant Bill Merritt.
There is something there. We don't know what it is. We don't know what we're going to find. I think a lot of people want us to uncover a skeleton or a body. And I guess best case scenario, that's what we would do.
The search resumes tomorrow. Startling statistics from ABC's Brad Wheelis.
For the first time ever, drugs are killing more people than traffic accidents. The Los Angeles Times looked at government data and found more than 30